Hey everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us a very interesting entrepreneur, Mr. Bhavik Vasa, the founder of GetVantage. Hi Bhavik, welcome to ELI.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Very pleased to be a part of this forum.
Bhavik, I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. Uh, the best way to introduce myself is uh, call me a sensitive extrovert who is always loved and enjoyed the path of being at the front end of creating something new, creating new categories. And that's something that I've spent the last decade doing uh, through my journey as an operator and a founder. Uh, I come from a family of businessmen, but what really gets me going and kicking is uh, if I'm getting to do something that's at the cusp of something new, innovative, and that's where I famously have something tattooed on my foot which says "Leave my mark behind." And so the best way to summarize what drives me on a daily basis, what fuels my confidence and energy, is that ability to leave my mark in everything and all things that I try and take my hands into.
Bhavik, now tell us about GetVantage. I am very curious to know about. We have, to be honest, we have never invited anyone who is uh, an entrepreneur who is supporting other entrepreneurs in terms of funding and all. So very excited to host you.
Absolutely. Sure. So, a little bit about the backstory of how GetVantage came to being. And to be very honest, and something I would love to share all our listeners, all the entrepreneurs and potential budding entrepreneurs is, uh, to be honest, uh, even GetVantage as this venture or this idea did not come to me as a eureka moment. It's not something that I woke up one day and I said, let's do this, right? To be very honest, it has been a culmination of my own personal experience and journey as an operator and a founder. As I mentioned earlier, while I come from a family of businessmen and entrepreneurs, I've spent myself the last decade and a half in the world of fintech, very early in the days of doing digital payments, mobile payments, and fintech in the Silicon Valley and in India. And through all my journeys, I realized that as we all are building new emerging ventures that are digital first and that are very asset light in how we are building it, I think also the need to access capital, to need to have alternative access to funds and capital to be able to grow these businesses and ventures needed to be looked at differently. And that's where today what we've rolled out as India's first revenue-based financing platform and marketplace, a fintech platform called GetVantage. That what we really do is we fuel and give growth capital to businesses that can really take capital that is completely founder-friendly, frictionless. You don't need to dilute equity or lose control in your business, but yet get access to this alternative growth capital that you can help fuel your revenues and grow to the next milestone. And so that's what we say. That really what we are doing is empowering the Indian ecosystem, the future of Indian businesses and brands with this alternative growth capital. And really along the way, what we believe is our passion is to democratize access to capital, right? We all should have a very non-biased way, very data-driven and tech-driven way to be able to even access funding and capital to grow all our businesses. And that's what we all are on this journey at GetVantage.
What is revenue-based funding? This is an interesting concept I am hearing. I think all the companies who fund other companies, they look at revenue as a primary indicator of health of a company. So how your venture is making a difference? How different are you?
Uh, so, Priya, globally, revenue-based financing is some sort of a new theme that has taken off. It's a new model of how we can fund businesses with capital advances that they need today. You need capital for increasing your digital marketing, increasing your digital spends, for inventory, for logistics, right? If you can get this booster capital or growth capital, it comes to you today as a capital advance, and really you don't have to give any collaterals or dilute any equity because you're going to repay this as a small percentage of your future cash flows and your future revenues. So really the entire focus here is to helping businesses and brands really get to their next stage of increasing their revenues, whatever growth capital they need right now to reach their next milestones and benchmarks of their revenues. And as they reach that, they are able to repay this funding on this capital advance, which is the most simple way to be able to have access to this capital. So really what we are doing is driving this quasi equity. It's known as a quasi equity instrument. Revenue based financing is a quasi equity instrument, which does not take convertibles, warrants, and equity in a business, nor is it like a traditional debt or a business loan where there is a fixed interest rate and a monthly EMI of payment. It's a net new model where you can take a capital advance to grow your businesses and pay it off from a small percentage of your future revenues.
So it is somewhere in the middle of equity and debt.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful combination, a slightly more frictionless model for founders to access capital, and that's why, very candidly, to share with all our listeners today, Priya, I very candidly submit and share that look, we are not disrupting anything. In fact, we are on a journey to simplify venture finance for all entrepreneurs and founders. What I really mean by that is, I think over the years, finance has become very complex and confusing, right? The entire structured finance, reducing interest rate, balloon payments, bullet payments, equity, convertible, debentures, optionally convertible, non-optionally convertible. I think we've overcomplicated finance through a lot of this overstructuring, and so really, in our small way, with revenue-based financing and with a very strong fintech platform and a tech-driven platform, what we are trying to do is be able to make this a very data-driven and performance-driven tool. So if you are a business, based on your data and your performance, your current revenue run rate, if we are able to give you a quick booster capital and that you get to pay as a percentage of your future revenues, and all of this as one flat fee, right? So you as the business, as a borrower, know what your cost of this capital is. You're able to take this capital, grow your revenues, and pay this off without having to give any equity, without having to give any collateral, etc.
Bhavik, I would love to talk more on the technical sides, but again, I'm not an expert in that field. So I'll fall back to my core discussion. I'd like to understand how you built this venture. Now you tell us your story and how different events in your life has led you to this point where you have built uh, a very different venture with the GetVantage.
Sure. So, as I share my background, I am not an investor background, nor am I an investment banker from background. I am an operator and founder, like many of us listening today. And so, really, the seeds of GetVantage come from my own journey as an operator and founder, and the gaps and the friction and the challenges I face while trying to raise growth capital and these kind of short-term capital and booster capital that I call it. As I was sharing, I come from a background of having built various fintech ventures. My last venture, in fact, which I helped scale and build, was a company called It's Cash, ITZ Cash. Again, one of the earliest players in fintech and digital payments in India. And even as we were building that, Priya, we had taken quite a good multiple rounds of equity capital. We had great investors backing us. We had raised about $30-40 million in venture capital and equity capital. We were a very fast growing and high scale business. We were 30-40 million revenue business. So we were much larger startup. Even then, as an operator, whenever we needed that short term working capital, right? we always found it difficult that traditional banks, lenders would ask us for collateral for short working capital, even though we were this 40 million revenue company. And that was some of the early triggers that really drove me to think of alternative options. That when we are building these digital businesses and asset-light businesses, we don't have collateral. The best pulse and health of our business is our actually recurring revenue runway. And if we are able to look at that data, which is more real time, more dynamic, we can look at a business's last 12 months track record and performance, last 2 months, last 1 quarter's growth in terms of MRR and monthly revenue run rates. I think those are much, much better parameters to assess the health of the business. And that's what we've built through the help of technology. We've been able to plug in our entire application, analysis, due diligence, disbursement, everything is done digital for all these online and digital businesses, right? So we connect to all these digital businesses through very, very strong tech and digital means to be able to not only assess the strength and the health of their business, but also the future potential of, by giving this additional capital, where this business can grow and how it can grow based on its digital marketing spends versus its revenue, its ROS, its ROI, right? And I think that's what really we are doing is tech-driven financing. We've taken technology and taken new parameters and data sets of a business's revenue and real-time data to be able to fund them and fund and fuel their growth.
How do you judge if a venture is worth investing or not? What is the criteria you follow?
So as I mentioned, firstly, uh, everything that we do is very founder-friendly and founder-driven. So we famously say this, there are no rejections on the GetVantage platform, right? It's only assessing whether this is the right time and what is the right quantum that we can fund businesses with, right? Absolutely, one of the key criteria is we are doing revenue-based financing, so the business and the startup has to already be in revenue and making some amount of monthly revenue, right? But then based on, as I mentioned to you, based on their real data, we look at their last 12 months of revenue run rate through all their digital channels, through their payment gateway, through their merchant accounts of Shopify, etc. We are able to also assess how the business is spending over the last 12 months, right? How much are they spending on Google and Facebook for digital marketing, etc. So these are the new data points and assessments we take, where we take a more real-time view over the last 12 months. And our engine and our technology, we have a very strong data science and machine learning platform that assesses tons of these businesses and online brands across e-commerce, B2B SaaS companies, edtech and e-learning platforms. These are all the startups and businesses that we've funded. And we are able to take all this data, assess what's that right amount, what's that right time for a business. So there are some businesses that come to us, they are very early in their journey. But again, we can help them and back them to scale before we are able to fund them. But really, like we say, we are democratizing access to capital. So there are no rejections on the GetVantage platform. As long as you are focused on building a revenue first and revenue generating business that is unit economics positive, we can definitely assess and define what's that right quantum that we can fund you with. And to share with all our listeners and fellow founders, our platform can fund you as much and as little as even 10 lakhs to 20 lakh rupees to as high as 2 crores, right? And I think that's the range we are able to fund businesses and say, how much is it that they really need? What is that the additional capital they need for the next 1 quarter, 2 quarters that we can help them with, scale their revenues, and they can pay that off from their future cash flow.
Now coming to the other point, you have solved the uh, demand side problem. So people are approaching you for funds, and you are able to shortlist who gets the fund, and all that problem is solved. How do you raise these funds to disperse it to the founders? How do you raise fund
Exactly.
yourself?
Sure. So as GetVantage, we are India's leading revenue-based financing marketplace. And really, what we do is we are a meeting point where we've been able to build the right technology to not only uh, generate demand and back brands by providing capital and funding for them. But on the back end, we have tons of supply partners. These are large financial institutions, NBFCs, family offices, debt funds that love investing in these new asset classes uh, because ultimately it's a win-win model, right? We're able to get a lot of investor community that don't have access to a lot of these new and emerging startups and brands. We are bringing access for them to fund in these businesses that are very high growing, and at the same time, we're able to get these brands to access capital that they would not be able to assess themselves and access themselves. So we are acting as a very, very strong tech-driven layer that is able to do this in a more efficient, in a more cost-effective, and a very frictionless and a quick manner for both the partners. And that's how we are fueling the umpteen amount of demand that we have. We are very happy to share with all our listeners that just this last 8-10 months with the pandemic and the interesting things that are happening all around us, the entire world and India, we are seeing all brands and businesses are moving online, are moving towards a more digital side of their businesses. So suddenly we've seen this huge upsurge in demand. Uh, we have uh, close to 400 plus brands, businesses that have come and applied with us in our platform, applied for funding, and are working closely with us. We are assessing so many brands. Today, we are one of the leading investors in the e-commerce and the online sector. But over and above that, we are also funding B2B SaaS businesses, edtech and health tech businesses. And I think what we've seen is suddenly everything that we've been able to build as this platform to connect investors and startups and SMEs. And you'll be surprised that even so many small businesses and SMEs that we don't traditionally call startups, right? They have been great brands, building family-run businesses. But now you have the new generation, the newer generation in that family is building a more online brand and business. So a lot of SMEs also that we've been able to fund through our platform.
Okay. Uh, Bhavik, from the competition point of view, you have many very well established investment firms like Sequoia, IDG, and SoftBank for that matter also. Uh,
Sure.
how do you compete among these established players?
So I think uh, as the India as a market, I think the future is extremely optimistic and bright for a country like India. The next 10 years is going to be a decade of new emerging brands, startups, the consumption story in India really booming. And I think the only thing limiting our exponential potential as a country is access to capital and various different forms of capital, right? I think we don't look at ourselves competing with really anybody. I think what the market and the industry says is that there is enough and more need for credit, more need for capital in all these underpenetrated and emerging startup sectors. Uh, as we mentioned, we sit as an alternative model to a lot of the other options out there. So you mentioned, of course, there is venture capital funds and private equity funds. You named a few. Uh, those are great for businesses to go out and raise money on equity to help set up their product, help do R&D, etc. But as they take equity capital, there is also a need for short-term debt for all these businesses. There's also need for revenue-based financing, which is more of a frictionless short-term capital that can keep helping these businesses grow. So whether it's venture capital, venture debt, or even traditional banks and business loans, we absolutely see the need and the market ready for an alternative, which is this alternative model of revenue-based financing that we call ourselves. And I think this is only going to be that much more encouraging and boosting for budding entrepreneurs to jump in because now there are so many options. I can I can share with you and your listeners, Pia, about 10 years ago, after having spent a long stint in the Silicon Valley, where I built my first venture, exited that, came back to India. In 2009-10, there were literally 3-4 venture capital funds, a handful of angels, And that's really how small the ecosystem of investors was. And just so much glad to see today, there is just so much more interest, so many more funds that are doing equity investments. And even for a lot of us as operators and founders who built our ventures, for us to jump in with some of these new tools of knowing exactly what businesses and founders need as an operator and being able to solve for that with these alternative funding models. I think we are only getting started, and we feel very, very strong. And I think what is a great reflection is our existing portfolio. Just in the last 1 year, we have 35, 40 brands that we have funded, and they are in our portfolio. And I think all the founders uh, that have gotten funding from us will tell you that they love this model because it's just the most fastest, frictionless, smarter way to keep taking short-term capital, to keep growing their business.
Now tell us, what is your vision? What product or what platform or what model you want to build in a very long term view?
Like I said, and I'll repeat again, Priya, uh, as GetVantage, what really fuels us is that we strongly believe that we are here to do two things. We are really keen on making access to capital as non-biased uh, and more data-driven as possible, right? What I mean by that is so many times as founders, we see that uh, when we go out, it's really not what you know, but it's really who you know, right? The entire venture capital model of how you have to go to funds, sometimes it's just knowing people rather than really how your business is doing. And that's where the human biases come in, which has uh, become quite a weight that becomes a limitation for more and more entrepreneurs and founders to join the ranks. So definitely we want to democratize access to capital that is very, very data driven and performance driven. Every business based on their data and performance should be able to access capital without any biases and without any friction. That's absolutely one very strong vision and mission for us. And as we do that, I think uh, we strongly believe we are one of the country's first tech films. Again, it's not a jargon, but it's really tech driven financing, where we are not disrupting anything. We want to really simplify venture finance. And I think those are the two things that make us uh, burn the midnight oil, work with new founders, emerging brands, and really helping them solve for their capital needs. But as GetVantage, really the name suggests, yeah, uh, it is about getting funded, getting that additional vantage for the business, for the founder, right? And that's where we provide capital plus intelligence, efficiency. Because as a business, you need a lot more than just capital. Can we help you with your digital marketing? Can we help you with performance marketing? We have a tons of ecosystem partners and tools that help businesses really grow their revenues. That's the main motive, right? Capital is one part of the problem we solve, but it's really capital plus intelligence, efficiency, and support that we can help brands really grow and scale.
Bhavik, what are the challenges you have faced while building and growing this venture?
I think some of the uh, most strongest things as a founder and operator I have learned is uh, idea. A new, good, innovative idea is only 50% of your success criteria, right? The remaining 50% is timing, hard work, right? And timing plays a very critical part. The time to market when you come up with something that is as innovative and new, uh, timing is very critical. What we've certainly seen is in this last 1 year of the pandemic, I think the timing couldn't have been more apt, right? As I mentioned to you, more and more online businesses, more and more brands are going digital. And I think their needs for the kind of money also the capital they need is for a lot of those digital marketing, digital spends, and reaching more customers in this new economy. So I think great tailwinds and timing that we've seen, which has turned from being a challenge to a very, very strong positive for us as GetVantage and for what we're trying to solve for in the Indian market, so to speak. But in addition to that, I think when you're always creating a new category and a new product, there is always a gestation period of building awareness and evangelizing a new concept. So I think the largest time I, as a founder, am spending at GetVantage is talking to as many founders, fellow founders, businessmen, entrepreneurs in the ecosystem, and through forums and evangelists like yourself, Priya, to really build awareness that there is alternatives. We don't have to only go back to incubators, accelerators, VC funds, and banks, right? Where we all know what are the challenges of raising money from all of these are, right? There is clearly another alternative that's more lighter and more smarter. And I think that's what I would definitely like to continue to do is uh, spread the word, build the awareness for this alternative model. And I think, like you mentioned, more players that will enter, the more competition, I find it very flattering. I think it's only going to help make the market and this category and this new asset class that we are building. We'll all just make this happen much, much more faster and in an accelerated fashion.
Bhavik, can you tell us about one tough decision you have had to make, where both sides looked equally good or bad?
Oh, that's you are asking me only for one tough decision, because I think every hour, every minute, every day in the life of a founder and entrepreneur, you have to make tough decisions. And as I very famously tell to all my colleagues, all my team members over the years and even now, that really in the journey of a founder, in the life of an entrepreneur, there is really never a right or wrong decision, right? Because you can only know the consequences of that in hindsight, right? A decision needs to be taken. I think I've always believed that uh, taking action and taking decision is more critical than not taking. The price you pay of taking a decision is much higher, whether it be right or wrong. Uh, so I really don't know if I can pinpoint any one such decision, Priya. But I think what I would love to share as a small piece of experience from my own personal journey as a founder is that uh, believe in one thing. Uh, there will be tough decisions, there will be right or wrong decisions, but the decision is yours. And make that decision keeping in mind that uh, the journey of an entrepreneur and a founder is about running a marathon, not a sprint, right? Just the way we should lead life, which is it's about building for a marathon, sustaining yourself, conserving your energy, and preparing yourself for a long, consistent run rather than a sprint or a short sprint. And that's where I see that even a lot of the decisions that we take have to take in mind that long-term vision, right? Uh, Never take decisions that would give benefit only in the short term, right? It might feel like the right thing in the short term, but if you look at everything, your company, your employees, your venture, your investors, all your stakeholders, your customers, all of that from a long term and a marathon vision, I think all the decisions then can be taken around that. So think of your venture, think of your startup as a marathon, not a sprint.
Give us one instance where you have witnessed the compounding effect.
The compounding effect is, to be honest, look, having been on the treadmill, and I call it literally every founder when scaling and building a venture gets onto a treadmill, and that treadmill can always be a decade long plus, right? And so I have been uh, at that. I've been on that treadmill for over a decade with my last ventures as well. And so, yes, fatigue does set in. You never know the compounding effect till you start seeing a little bit of a burnout effect, right? When you're on the treadmill so long. And so, I personally did experience that also after a long journey. We got a very good exit at its cash. We were able to exit to a NASDAQ listed global group called EBIX for 150 million back in 2017. Uh, while the group chose me to continue to run the consolidated entity and ship for a couple of more years, I went back to my roots and saying, if life's a marathon, and putting forward that always believe in one more thing. Uh, which is what I famously say, life and work balance. We've got it wrong for many years, Priya. It's not work-life balance. We have to get our priority right? It's life first and then work, and that balance that has to be found. And so from time to time, taking that step back, reflecting. And I personally did that as well. After my journey and the exit last time, and before jumping back into starting a new venture, GetVantage, I really took a time off. I took a sabbatical. I had my first baby and firstborn, and I completely became a hands-on father for that first 6 months to a year. And I think that's the only way you can step back, not let that compounding effect mount up too much, and keep calibrating yourself for that life-work balance.
What are some failures you have gone through as an entrepreneur?
Again, like the tough decision question, there are so many. Yeah, there is not one failure. There are so many failures. I openly tell everybody that entrepreneurship is a very lonely and a journey not for the faint-hearted, because every day there is a new curveball coming your way, right? But there have been many failures. I think to share with the listeners, very early in my days, uh, even as early as when I was 18, 19, and having experienced a academic setback in my life, while at that time it felt very unfair and unjust, uh, still, I think uh, that really fueled me to go harder at a much younger age, to try to set uh, slightly more ambitious goals. The hunger was just far more from that setback that really fueled me to kind of take uh, 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 you know harder steps and work twice as harder and smarter. So I think not only have there been a few academic setbacks early in my personal life, but even as you build a venture, right from you know sometimes investors not supporting you, or sometimes the industry writing you off, or even your internal team members sometimes leaving you. I think there have been tons of these setbacks. But then if you and let those setbacks hit you hard, take a day or two. I think we all are human. Taking a day or two to let that get internalized, right? Uh, yes, we all are emotional. Yes, it will affect us. But ensure after a day or two of it being affected, you're able to take that in your stride and probably just work harder in zeroing down on solving that one problem a day, right? And getting to the next. And I think that's the only thing that keeps me going, is that we'll continue to have many failures and setbacks. It's really just how you deal with them, and not let one setback affect you for a long period of time.
Babik, since you meet a lot of entrepreneurs every day and you invest in them, can you tell us what is something that you have found common across all the founders and co-founders you have met?
I think I am um, the most satisfying part of my uh, uh, job and career right now, Priya, as we speak, is that in my new avatar as GetVantage, I'm actually backing and fueling and funding founders. And being an operator and founder myself, I find it extremely satisfying working with so many young, budding entrepreneurs, seeing them work twice as harder as I used to. And it just is so encouraging to just see the talent and the hunger that I see in the young generation that we have in India right now. I think that is just far more rewarding right now. I see teams of 3, 4 founders uh, who don't come from any background of entrepreneurship, but have taken the risk and have jumped in. Uh, I see very mature founders also having the energy of a young first-time founder. So I think very, very encouraging, interesting times. That's the most satisfying part of my job, to work with these founders and helping them solve some of their problems. I keep telling them that I don't like to advise you, because really nobody can advise anybody. We have to all learn and teach ourselves from our own experiences. So I love sharing my experiences and not really trying to advise or get into their shoes. But I'll tell you one thing that makes me sometimes laugh and smile, and I would like a lot of our listeners to refrain from, is this huge FOMO effect. I see across all this potential and optimism. I also see one thing, which is a lot of young founders and entrepreneurs are getting driven by the fear of missing out. This whole FOMO of, doing it fast, doing it now, missing out. Uh, as I have seen multiple journeys and the mentors I have learned from. Life and every venture really truly is a marathon. Uh, Things that don't happen for you in your journey, in your startup, opportunities that you missed were meant to be missed. There's a very nice hidden motive behind why it didn't happen, right? So let's not get carried away. Let's not become very FOMO. Let's not run behind, uh, being a part of a circle or being chasing investors. I think what is meant to happen will happen. Just continue to focus on each day and keep executing. And I think that's uh, just that one thing I love to kind of share through my own personal experiences and journeys with every founder that I work with.
Finally, this is my last question. Tell us, what are the learnings that our listeners can take away from your life or your journey?
I think every journey, the biggest single learning is that no two journeys and no two stories are same. So please, as every budding entrepreneur, founder friend out there, please don't copy paste your life and your journey from anybody else's, any other successful founders' journey that you know of. Every journey and story is very unique. Mine has been umpteenly unique as well. And so get your principles and your values in place. Let those drive your decisions and let your journey be as unique as mine has been. Uh, Surround yourself with great mentors. The one thing that I lacked in years of experience, but I was able to make up for in my own journey in building ventures, was just surround yourselves with a lot of mentors that can guide you and that can support you and that can give you that reassuring words, because this journey is completely filled with self-doubt. Uh, so just stick to those values and principles. And like I mentioned, for me, it's very important, and I'll just, for the benefit of everyone, and I'm repeating myself, but yes, life is a marathon, not a sprint. Keep focusing on that life-work balance. Take those pauses in life and be at it. And I think those are few things that I would love to translate not only through my personal interactions, but even as GetVantage. If we are able to support businesses and founders with all of these aspects of building a venture and startup, I think that's what will be very meaningful for me and for the ethos of GetVantage and the mission that we are on.
I must say it was a pleasure to host you here at ELI. Thanks, Bhavik, for your time, and our best wishes for GetVantage.
Thank you so much. Again, a pleasure interacting with you, Priya. Great initiative by you with ELI, and I really keep giving you and your team also the same confidence, both strength to strength. And I think we all are just getting started with uh, uh, an umpteen plethora of emerging successful entrepreneurs and founders over the next decade in India. So very happy to be a part of that ecosystem, and we look forward to talking to you and your listeners soon again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavik.
Cheers.